Hello, and welcome to the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group meeting for August 27th. Can't believe we are already almost through August. We've got a great meeting for you today. Our agenda for today is standard updates for the SharePoint Framework. We got the patterns and practices updates, and we got some new community samples to talk about them. We got 3 great demos from Erik, Dipen, and April and Hugo. Are presenting in order there: accessible accordion pattern, phone directory, and then also enhanced Power Apps web part. So very excited to see all of those. So let's get through our intro stuff so we can get to those great demos as quickly as possible. I do want to remind folks we've got lots of great opportunities to participate in the SharePoint Framework Patterns and Practices program, whether it's this call or the program overall. We got demos, so you can demo anything SharePoint Framework, anything at PnP. All these demos are fantastic. I've said almost every call, these are my favorite parts of the call are the demos. So really love those demos and appreciate those demos from everybody that gives them. Contributing on GitHub, that could be reporting issues, submitting pull requests, or helping others with issues. That's a great way to give back if you have a few minutes and you see a question you might know the answer to or can help with. Love for you to help out that way. It really helps people get their answers a little bit faster. And then finally, you can always provide feedback on all these calls. How are the calls doing? How's our documentation? Where else can we help? And positive feedback is, of course, okay too, because it helps us maybe prioritize stuff that is working well and doing a little bit more of it. And I just wanted to say sort of a little bit explicitly, obviously, anyone and everyone is welcome here in the PnP community to do demos, to contribute, and to provide feedback. Any of these channels, everybody is welcome. The door is wide open. Come on in. We'd love to have you. So please, if you're interested in doing a demo or getting more involved, please just reach out. We'd love to help you get started. And we'll talk a little bit in a second about the Sharing is Caring initiative, which is a great way to get started with that as well. So Pajo links, we got our dev YouTube channel, which is all the developer-focused videos. We have the PnP videos, which are all the recordings of our community calls and this call and our other general development special interest group call. We have 4 different open source organizations listed there. So SharePoint, PnP, Office Dev, and Microsoft Graph. All of them do encourage contributions and reporting issues and helping out where possible. Some of them have certain repos that maybe are not looking for contributors as such, but maybe they have some source code or samples there. But all of them, all 4 of those locations are incredibly valuable resources for you to get started on your SharePoint, PnP, or Microsoft Graph development experiences. So definitely check those out. Sample galleries, we've got samples for web parts, extensions, list formatting, and Teams samples. So if you have a cool idea for a sample, absolutely encourage you to get that submitted, put that in so we can include that in our list of samples, and it'll get updated on this call and other calls. So encourage you, I know a lot of you are doing great work for your customers and your companies. Where appropriate and where possible, would love if you can share that with the community. Obviously, be careful with sharing that kind of work, get approvals. But when you can, love to have those samples up for everybody else to learn from and see the cool work that you have done. And then finally, open source initiatives and samples, aka MS-M365 PnP. The one link to rule them all will get you access to all of these other links. So that's kind of a landing page for all of the patterns and practices stuff all up. And then finally, aka.ms/SPFx will get you the SharePoint Framework developer documentation. So you can get that. That's all the SharePoint developer documentation, as well as the SharePoint Framework docs. So check that out to get started on any questions you might have around SharePoint. As mentioned previously, we have the Sharing is Caring initiative. I think David wanted to talk to this slide.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So Sharing is Caring is an initiative by PnP to provide guidance and hands-on instruction for everyone in the community that wants to get a little more involved. So typically the first barrier of entry for contributing is just the confusion around how to work within and around GitHub. So we have first-time contributor sessions available to provide you some of that introductory information on how you can get involved with the GitHub experience in relation to PnP. We also have a community docs session. So if you want to submit new documents, and these are absolutely for everyone, non-dev, dev, anyone who wants to contribute into the community is welcome to any and all of these. Now we're amping up the number of sessions for September, but we are not interfering at the week of Ignite. So you'll notice there is a jam-packed collection of dates surrounding Ignite and the rest of the month, as well as a brand new session on using the PnP SPFx samples in conjunction with NVM. So we understand that some of you may feel like, hey, I want to contribute, but I also just need some guidance on how to get started with all of these samples that are available. And so we're really here to provide that guidance, not only from a contribution perspective, but a consumption perspective. So go to that link, aka.ms, sharing is caring. Lots of event session dates available for you, as well as Asia Pacific friendly times now available. So starting at 4 a.m. Pacific. So we're going to be up early and it's going to be awesome. And we invite everyone to join if you'd like to get more involved. Patrick, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And thank you for doing these sessions. These are fantastic sessions. I know we've gotten wonderful feedback from folks who've attended them. So do encourage anybody that's interested, sign up for those. They are free, and certainly encourage you to check those out. So some training announcement. We've got the PnP Virtual Conference coming up. That is on September 1st, which, if I am not mistaken how dates work, that is next week, next Tuesday, I believe. So AKMS PnP Virtual Conference, I think you can still sign up there. And again, it's free. It's a great all-day conference put on entirely by the community. It's all MVP driven. I think myself and others will be in the Q&A at the end, or whatever we're calling that at the end. But the rest of it is completely put on by the community. It's really outstanding to see that. I know Paolo and others have done a lot of great work putting this together. So excited to be part of that next week. And I've just seen now over 1,500 folks are registered for this free conference. So we're going to make up the free price in volume. Vesa, go ahead and take us away on SharePoint Framework update.
Yep, so let's go through this quickly. So just a recap on some of the latest material which we have available. So obviously we're working on heavily on the SharePoint Framework solutions in store. Right now, actually, I should be in a meeting where we are planning the improvements on this one, but I will get there later on the hour. But anyway, so there's additional documentation and guidance available related on how to get your stuff and SharePoint Framework solutions in store, and how do you expose your solutions for the hundreds of thousands of end users for Microsoft Teams or SharePoint usage. So both works. Related on the Microsoft Teams, we also have a new focus, updated focus, not really updated focus, but there's a new article series related on building for Microsoft Teams using SharePoint Framework, which we will be evaluating and improving one step at a time. So this is really cool stuff as well, because the SharePoint Framework gives you the capability on implementing UX capabilities for Microsoft Teams without hosting, without operations on that side. So we'll take care of the hosting of your solution and all of that. And that's the beauty of SharePoint Framework for sure, and CDN and all of that stuff. And the last piece, last slide quickly on my side. So right now we're still kind of trying to figure out what will be the SharePoint Framework 1.12 exactly. So what are the things what we want to include on that one? But Teams integration improvements will be absolutely there. We'll make additional capabilities available on that side. In general, there's improved Microsoft Graph APIs, taxonomy APIs came out pretty soon. There's additional things as well. Branding settings in portals. There will be cool announcements coming in Ignite within a few weeks related on additional settings and capabilities in modern portals, and those will be available in the API level as well. And better Microsoft Teams embed support, Microsoft SharePoint Framework Store improvements in the pipeline, and then a lot of other stuff in the SharePoint side as well. But that's a quick summary from the engineering on those.
Awesome. Thank you, Vesa, for that update. So quick updates on the PnP program offerings. PnP client-side PnPjs library 209 is planned for September 4th release. We'll have bug fixes and a few new features. It has been a very busy month for myself and a lot of the other core maintainers. So it's going to be a fairly light release, but there is still time. If there's stuff you would like to see get into that release, we, of course, are accepting pull requests and encourage you to get those submitted, and we can hopefully get those included in that release as well. I know, Ed, just a minute. Thank you, of course, to all our contributors. Remember, we're trying to help get everybody onto the M365 PnPjs Twitter account. So do encourage, follow that Twitter account. We're going to try and get our updates out of that account and off of my personal account. But then, as always, please direct any and all feedback to the issues list. That just ensures we can track it and make sure we don't forget about it, because that can sometimes happen if it's just random chats or Twitter messages or other things. It's easy to lose track of, and we certainly don't want to do that. So please submit things to the issues list. pnp.github.io/PnPjs for all the docs. And then you can follow us again, like I said, on Twitter. So CLI, I think Gary wanted to speak to this slide.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. So it's been quite a busy few weeks for the CLI. If you've been around the project, you probably noticed that there's a new name. So the Office 365 CLI will be now called CLI for Microsoft 365 going forward. So this is version 3. So this is a major release. There are a couple of breaking changes to kind of make you aware of going to the new package. So obviously there's a new package name at PnP CLI-Microsoft 365, which introduces the new executable M365 instead of O365 that we had previously. So the O365 executable will be going away in the new version. One of the biggest changes is we've removed the immersive mode in V3. So if you are using that way to use a CLI, that won't be possible going forwards. We've had new features as well going, as well as the new version. So we've got some improvements around creating SharePoint sites, and we've had some great documentation created by Velin Georgiev around using certificate-based authentication with the CLI. Which would really help you if you wanted to do app-only scenarios with the Microsoft 365 APIs. So I'd encourage everyone, if you want to get ahead before we release the version 3 at the end of this month, which is only a few days away, that you can pick up the version 3 in beta. Please contact us through the GitHub repository. If you want to have any new features, raise them as issues. If you just want to find out a little bit more, please dive into discussions as well on the GitHub repo. Please follow us and contact us on Twitter. And again, thank you to all the contributors that we've had in the past that have enabled us to get to version 3. And I'm sure we've got lots more in the pipeline to come. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Gary, for that update. So moving on to the reusable components. So V2 beta release of the React controls and the property controls. Encourage everyone to check that out. That updates support for React 16, version 16, as well as some of the Office UI Fabric V6 features. So you can install that. The commands are there on the page. And these are, of course, a great collection of reusable controls that you can use to jumpstart your projects and get a great out-of-the-box look without having to invest all that time and energy and work yourself. They are, of course, looking for feedback, as we all are on the PnP projects. So use those betas, provide feedback. The idea being the more feedback we can get prior to, I guess what we'd call GA or regular release, non-beta release, the better that initial release can be. So try those controls out and provide feedback for the folks there. And then the PnP SPFx Generator, no updates to really report this week, but still a great tool to help get your projects jump-started, especially if you want to use options that aren't available in the out-of-the-box SharePoint framework Yeoman Generator. This allows you to use a bunch of different frameworks and install a bunch of different capabilities, such as those PnP reusable controls into your project without having to do extra steps post-generator execution. So if your shop, if your company has some extra stuff you want to do, the PnP SPFx Generator is a great place to get started with that. And of course, you do end up with a quote-unquote real SPFx project under the hood. It's got all the same dependencies as the Microsoft generator. So you'll get a real, regular project once it is all done. And then no updates this week on the Modern Search. Still encouraging folks to try out the version 3 stuff. Great features there to create a modern search portal with a set of web parts. Current version, we're not looking for new features at this point. We're only doing bug fixes, and we'll have more information soon on what can come with the, what will may become version 4 or whatever. We'll see what comes next for Modern Search. So a fantastic way to build Modern Search portals, and again, build on a lot of this wonderful community work for your customers and companies without having to invest that time yourself. And then samples. I think Hugo's going to cover this.
Yes, thank you. So the PnP SPFx samples are a great place to learn if you're trying to build SPFx extensions, Teams applications, web parts. You can go to ak.ms/SPFx web parts and SPFx-extensions. We have 3 new web parts over the last 2 weeks. One is the PnPjs Explorer by Siddharth and Kunj Saigani. That allows you to actually use the PnPjs in a web part, so you can try the syntax and get the results. We also have a new cascading managed metadata using the Graph API by Anup Tati, and a web part by me, which is purely intended for you to actually use the Microsoft 365 CLI to upgrade applications or upgrade web parts. Thank you for updating some web parts. We have Nandeep that made some updates, and I did some updates as well. So thank you, everyone, for your contribution. We look forward to more contributions from all of you. Back to you, Patrick.
Fantastic. Thank you, Hugo. And that PnPjs Explorer is a really neat thing. So I hadn't seen that until I saw it on Twitter, I guess, last week. So very cool work there. Very cool work, of course, on all the samples. But PnPjs always has a soft spot in my heart. So now we're going to go to the demos. But first, before we do the demos, we're going to try and do this thing. So everybody who's interested, please turn on your video. And by turning on your video, you consent to be part of our Together Mode photo, which will be displayed on the internet for all kinds of various marketing purposes with random people and so forth.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. So, thank you, AC. So you're super close on the camera. You have a big red head. So let's see. Let's try to do this fast so we have enough time for the demos. But I think it's a great idea to actually get this done. And let's see, do we get more people? We still are getting people. Good. People are super efficient. This is really good. Everybody was ready to go on doing this. So what we're planning to do, we talked about this one with Patrick. What we're planning to do in the future is hopefully between always just before we start the demos, we can actually do this. Somebody has a really big head on this 3rd row. There we go. So, but just before the demos, do a screenshot. I think it's just, especially now that everybody's working from home and we don't see too many people, I think this shows the community. So thank you, everybody. We're not seeing any more people joining in, so I will take a screenshot. A few of them, 1, 2, 3, done. And another one still, 1, 2, 3, done. And let's do one crazy one. 1, 2, 3, go crazy! Ah! Cool. I think that's it. So let's actually get to the demos. Thank you, everybody, for that one. Really great.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. That's a really cool thing. I think it really shows off the community and shows off everybody being here. So that's awesome. And so getting back on track, our first demo is going to be Erik with the accessible accordion part. Erik, if you want to take it away.
Okay, great. I'm Erik Benke, and I really appreciate the opportunity to show you my accessible accordion web part today. The web part is available within the PnP samples for you to play around with or to use within your tenant. I'll do a quick summary here. So it allows you to add collapsible accordion sections to a SharePoint page or Teams tab based on list data. It works great for adding FAQs to pages. And so I'm a board member of the Portland SharePoint users group, and I originally created it as part of an intro to the SharePoint framework presentation that I did. I got a lot of interest and suggestions from the participants there, and in just a moment you'll see a demo. When I show you the demo, it's actually going to be based on how some of them used it within their company's tenant, actually. So real life example there. and it leverages the React accessible accordion library. I chose this for several reasons. For one, I just like the way it looked visually, and also very importantly, accessibility was a high priority for that library. So it works very well with screen readers, and it's easily customizable via CSS. And there's a link to the code at the bottom. All right, so let me jump over to the demo. So like I mentioned, for my demo, I'm going to use a real life use case. A major healthcare provider in Portland, in response to the COVID crisis, ramped up their use of Teams a number of months ago, and they use this web part for some of their FAQs to help their employees get up to speed quickly. So what I'm going to show you is similar to what they did, but not identical for obvious reasons, but this will give you an idea of what they did. And the first thing I'm going to show you is the underlying lists that I've set up, because if you're going to use this web part, you need to have your data in a list in order to surface it within the accordion. So here's a Teams FAQ list that I created, for instance. And when you create the list, you're going to want to keep the default title column, and then you'll add an additional content column, and it needs to be called content. You can make it a multiple lines of text column and enable enhanced rich text if you want to. And as you can see from this view of this list, I've used images and hyperlinks in this particular list. And then I also have another one here, which is SharePoint FAQ. So now if I go to a page on my site, I can add, put it in edit mode, and I can add the web part. And so you can see that I have a placeholder that prompts me to choose a list that meets the correct specifications, and clicking on this button, or of course you can use the little pencil icon too. Open up the property pane here. And so I'll give my accordion a title, which will be displayed just above it. So I'll call it Teams FAQ. And then I select the list that I want to use in the accordion. So in this case, Teams FAQ. And so that adds that. I'm also gonna, I can also add additional ones to the same page. And so I'll add another one. And in this case, this is going to be my SharePoint FAQ, and I'll select that list, and now that's there as well. It's also very easy to, so let me publish this out. And so there those are on the page, and it's very easy to update content as well. Like for instance, if I want to add a new item to my accordion, I add a new item in my list. Put something in here. So I have a new item there, and now if I go back to my page, it's been added to my accordion there as well. Likewise, if you delete an item, it'll be removed from the accordion, and then the edits you make are added very quickly. So let's take a look at the code. This is what was built using the React framework. In the interest of time, I'm just going to show you my React component file, React accordion.tsx, which is where most of the heavy lifting for this web part occurs. At the top, we have our imports, of course. I've highlighted a few here. There's the PnP SP library, which we use for accessing the SharePoint REST API so that we can grab the data from our selected list that we want to populate the accordion with. The PnP placeholder control is also used. You saw that already, to instruct users to select a list when they initially add the web part. And then, of course, the React accessible library and its components, which provide the UI for our accordion. Moving down into the React accordion class on line 20, we can see our constructor method. This is important for setting initial state for the component. So we initialize the state in line 25, and then we invoke the getListItems method to populate the items array with the list data that we want to have in state for our accordion React component. And then moving down to line 31 here, There's our getLists item method, where I have a conditional line 32 to make sure that the selected list is not undefined and has an ID that's longer than 0. So that just ensures that we have a legitimate list selected. And then in line 33, that's where we're using the SP library to make our SharePoint REST API call. We're requesting all the items from the list that was chosen in the property pane, but we're selecting for just the title and content field values, since that's all we need for populating the accordion with data. Then we take those results, line 34, and we're storing as an array, and then we use the setState method to pass those into our state for the component. So we'll leverage that in just a minute to surface the data via our accordion UI. I also wanted to make sure I pointed out on line 46 that I'm using the component did update React lifecycle method, which is a method that gets invoked immediately after updating occurs. So you can see here that the value of my list ID prop changes on my component. If it changes on my component and is no longer the same as the previous list ID value, and then we invoke our getList items method and retrieve the data we need from the items of the newly selected list, so that accordion will show data from the newly chosen list instead of the old one. Okay, and so now to our render method, which is where we provide the output onto the screen. On line 53, I'm creating a list selected variable, a Boolean type that's true when list ID is not undefined and has a length greater than 0. And what we're going to display for this div depends on whether the list selected variable is true or false. If it's false because no list has been selected, as you can see in line 56 through 63, that we're going to display the placeholder component that prompts the user to select a list. However, if list selected is true, because a legitimate one has been selected, the placeholder is replaced with an accordion populated with our list data. So let's go through and see how that happens. In line 66, that's pretty straightforward. We're just adding some text above the accordion based on what, if anything, was entered in the optional accordion title field in the property pane. When I showed you the demo, like my first accordion, I typed in Teams FAQ. And then starting in line 67, we begin to generate the accordion itself. There's a number of components here that are part of the library. And as you can see, they're nested. Within each accordion that we create, we're probably going to have more than one item. So that means multiple accordion items. Accordion item here represents a single collapsible section of the accordion and includes a header and a panel. You can see how that's laid out in lines 70 through 79. So in order to have each item in our SharePoint list represented in its own collapsible section of the accordion, I use the map function as a way to iterate through each of the items within our React accordion state. And you can see that in line 68. And then I feed the value of the title of the particular item, line 73, into the accordion item button component so that it appears in the header of the collapsible section. And then my content field data into the accordion item panel in line 77. So you'll notice when I'm handling the content, I'm using the React element dangerously set inner HTML. So that's React's equivalent of inner HTML. It's a little scary looking, but that was intentional on the React developers' parts out of concerns that you might expose your users to a cross-site scripting attack if you're not careful. In this case, though, it's not a concern, right? Because we're within the context of SharePoint and we know exactly where this data is coming from. That is, it's coming from the content field of a list item. And the reason I need this instead of just item.content, sort of like I did with the item.title value, is to be able to support enhanced rich text within the content field, since SharePoint provides that as HTML markup. So I need to treat it as HTML instead of just text. Hugo actually tipped me off to this simple approach when I was looking at much more complex ways to enable enhanced rich text in the web parts. So I really appreciate his guidance and contribution there. So that is it. Thank you. And once again, here's where you can find the code and also how to reach me as well.
Fantastic. Very great demo. Thank you, Erik, for doing that today. And that demo and all the demos will be available in the GitHub repo. And this recording is, of course, will be available within about 24 hours after the call to answer the question that was there. So any questions for Erik, please add them into the chat. And Dipen, if you want to take over.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me share my screen. So I'm a little bit excited as my first demo to the PnP community, and thanks for giving the opportunity. I am Dipen Shah, and let me take an introduction of mine that I'm technical lead at the Stradley solution and working on the SharePoint and Office 365 stuffs and handling the all the stuffs regarding the Microsoft 365 for the Stradley solutions. You can reach me out on the any Twitter account and the LinkedIn account as well. I would like to demonstrate the demo of the telephone directory. Basically, the requirement generates from my organization, from the management side, that if there are any solution where people can get the user's detail to contact them, because 300 people are working in my organization, and it's obvious that no one have all the contact detail for all the employees. So I started working on it around 2 months back. Driving factor is that the web part is for the intranet portal, so people are using it to get the user's detail by first name and last name and by email address, whatever they want. I really explored the Graph API and its usage regarding the user's conversation and to get the user's information from the Active Directory, and explore some Fluent UI control as well. Summary of these web part is employee of the organization can find out the employee to contact them by email address and phone number and business phones. So let's move to the demo. This is the demo web part that I have deployed on my tenant. Here I have created the 3 tabs, and first is for by search user by the first name, the second is for the last name and the email. So let me search by the first name. So when I type the text into the text box, it will automatically find the users from the Active Directory through Graph API. There are the 5 users in my Active Directory with starting from the D. By last name, people are finding, some people has remembered that the person's last name, so they are finding those employees through last name and that by email address as well. Coding portion. I have created the multiple components for the for each search area. The main component is, let me demonstrate first the web part file. Here I have initialized the MS Graph client object as well as my MS Graph service instance. I have initialized onto the web part file, and I'm passing it through web part properties to the other components. Into the MS Graph service, I have created methods to connect with the graph. So I have created the 3 methods: get user profile by email address, so people will get the data; get user properties by last name as well as it's by first name. So here I have filter by the specific property of the users, that surname and the given name. It's a first name. And get user by the email. Okay. Into the main web part file, I have used the pivot element to make the tabbing into the web part. So I created the pivot section over here and create 3 pivot item for that. For each pivot item, I have given the item key over there, and I am checking that I selected key to the below of that section, so I can know that which tab is active right now, and based on that I am calling the component for that. So by first name, it's the child component over here. So it's my child component, and I'm passing some properties to that component, like the MS Graph client and the service instance. So my first name, component is there. To get the users by email address, I call my service, my method from the graph service over there, and he will respond me as an array in user properties. To display the users, I have used the detail list control of the Fluent UI, and it's too awesome to use it. So I just pass the user properties which I get by this service. So it will automatically render the all the users from the Active Directory into the web part. Additionally, I have created the multilingual web part for that. So let me show the multilingual file. One for the German people and one for the English people. So based on your locality and region, web part will be displayed either it's in German or either it's in the English. These are the demo. If you have any query, then come out to me and we will discuss and solve out your query. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. Great demo, really slick implementation. There were a couple of questions there in the chat. If you can follow up on those, that'd be fantastic. But really great demo. Thank you for submitting that and doing that today for us. I think that's a really slick implementation of a pattern that can be applied to a lot of different kind of use cases. So thank you for that. And then finally, our last demo of today is going to be April and Hugo. I don't know which one of you is going to present, but take it away. April, it looks like. Take it away.
Yep. Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, so I'm really excited to be here to show off the enhanced Power Apps web part that Hugo built. Being a heavy Power Apps user and SharePoint user myself, I know that this web part's really going to make a lot of my fellow Power Appers excited because it really addresses some of the long-standing feature requests, which I'll show off today. But first, I want to start off by showing the current out-of-the-box Power Apps web part in SharePoint so that we can kind of do a quick comparison. So I have a SharePoint page here, and I'm going to go in and we'll add the out-of-the-box Power Apps web part. And with this, we'll notice that we only have two things that we can configure. One, obviously, passing it in the web link or ID of your application. So to get that, you would go to Power Apps, find the app you want to embed in SharePoint, click the dots, go to the settings. Whoops, sorry. Go to details, not settings. And then you can either copy the app ID or the web link, whichever one in the web part will take that. So I'm going to copy that link. And you paste that in, and as soon as you do that, it updates the web part and you see your embedded Power App. But really, with the out of the box, that's the only thing we can configure other than showing or hiding a border for that. So if I publish this, you'll kind of see, so one of the main feature requests that you'll see in the community is this current web part, you can't really make it take up the full real estate of the screen. It's kind of forced at a certain aspect ratio on here. So even though this is a tablet-based Power App, it's not taking up the full real estate of the screen. So that's one of the first things that Hugo's web part helps to solve. So if I go to my enhanced Power App web page, and we'll add in Hugo's enhanced web part, you'll see that we obviously have much more different configuration options that we have. So first I'm going to put in that same link to my time off Power App. And you'll see first thing, without me configuring anything else, it's taking up way more real estate and looks quite a bit better on the page. So that alone, to me, is a huge benefit of this web part. You'll see that if we expand out the appearance section, so we can take advantage of certain aspect ratios that you would be familiar to you if you already in Power Apps. So for example, I have this Power App open. If I go to File, Settings, and Screen Size, these are the same aspect ratios that you currently get within Power Apps. So you can take advantage of those in his enhanced web part. So if I could leave it at the 16:9, it looks pretty good. But I can also do like fixed height. So I can come in here and put in like a fixed height of 500, whatever my needs may be, and use it that way. So pretty powerful with that alone. But one of the things that gets me really excited about this web part is the ability to pass in dynamic properties. Okay, so to me, this is a game changer. This is something that I've personally wanted for a while, and I know everyone in the community has, but to be able to have a scenario where you notice I already have a list here on this page with some list formatting on it, and the list is the back end of my Power App. So wouldn't it be great if we could have these two talk? So when I select one of these entries from my time off request list, it could just take me directly to that entry in the edit screen of my app. So we can do that now with this web part in the dynamic properties. All we have to do is turn on the past dynamic properties option here. And then it's going to tell us what source do you want to connect to. So we only have one list on here. So I'm going to connect that to my time off request list. And then we just use the drop down to select, okay, what do we want to pass into that? So in my case, I'd like to get the ID of this currently selected item and pass that here into the Power App. So I'm going to select the column containing the filter value option. And he couldn't have made it more easier because we can just use the drop downs and point and click. So now I'm just going to select my ID field. And then the only other thing we have to do is specify the parameter name. So this is the parameter value that Power Apps is going to look for so that it knows how to get the parameter value. So I'm going to call this ID because that's what I already have coded into my Power App. So now all I have to do is click out of this. Let's republish this app. And let's see, I'm going to select this one here. And you see, as soon as I do, kind of reevaluates, and it takes me directly to that record in my Power App automatically. So I can go in and make any changes if I need to. Really, really powerful application. And how this works from the Power App side of things. So since the web part kind of configures what we're passing into it, all we have to do in your app is go into your app on start. Okay. And you can just do a check. So you see I'm checking to see if there's a parameter using the param function called ID. And if that's not blank, I'm going to set a global variable called selected item to the selected item from my entry with that parameter value. So that sets the item. And then I'm saying navigate to my edit screen if that parameter value is there. So in my edit screen, I'm just have a form control and I'm setting that item's property of the form control to that selected item value. So it just gets passed in seamlessly. Right? So again, game changer here. The other thing though, wait, there's more, that this will do is theming. So if you have a SharePoint theme and you want that to apply to your Power App, we can pass your SharePoint theme elements to the Power App so you have one consistent, holistic brand. So we can select the theme option and we can control all of these different theme variants from SharePoint to pass that into Power Apps. So for example, I could take our button background hovered variable. And once I select that, I can pass that into Power Apps. So I already have this kind of wired up. So if I go into, let's republish this, one of these items again, to go into that edit screen. Let me just kind of refresh the page. Let's see, let's select that one this time. Well, I can make it change this background color based off of the theme. And I happen to just select one where it's already blue and it matches the exact. But it's really simple to wire up in the Power App side of things as well. So if we go back to the Power App, you see that I have this rectangle control. So I can target a parameter, which I did in the app on start, called selected theme, and I can pass in a parameter of theme. And then I can go into my object and I can say if that parameter is not blank, use the color value that I've passed it in, otherwise use whatever hard-coded one I have. So again, game changer. This is something that we could do in Teams. There's like a Teams theme that we could inherit. We can pull in the theme in Teams, but we didn't have that yet in SharePoint, and now we do. So awesome use case here, and I'm super excited about this and happy to show it. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Hugo so he can show the code behind piece of this.
Thank you. Let me share my code. Okay, so if you look at the out-of-the-box web part, really, this is the out-of-the-box web part. If you look at the code that it just produces an iframe that has a whole bunch of parameters and a whole bunch of things. So the first thing that I did, and I'm sorry, this code is actually embarrassingly simple. It's leveraging a lot of built-in capabilities in the SPFx framework. But all I did here is I took the iframe, reproduced the URL, and then I added some extra functionality. So the first thing that I did in my web part itself is I actually imported the dynamic property from the component base so that I can make dynamic properties. And I'm sorry, I have a hard time saying that word in English, property. Then what I did is I imported some dynamic property pane field set so I can actually show those dynamic properties in the property pane. I also use a new control that I've created for the PnP property, reusable property controls, which is an HTML control that allows you to embed HTML in the property pane, just make it easy for you to do that. Then what I do is I define a dynamic property of type string, which is going to be the value that we want to pass as a dynamic property. I also keep track of the name of that thing. The other thing that I do is I make the web part theme aware. So I do capture the theme provider and the theme variant. And then in the on-init of the web part, I actually capture the context of the web part to grab the theme provider, and I do get the theme variant, and I subscribe to the theme changed event so I can refresh the web part if the theme changes. And then all I really do is I get the value of the dynamic property if it's available. Otherwise, I just say that it's not defined. While I'm there, I'm also grabbing the locale, so the current language configuration of the current context, so that we can pass that information to the Power Apps as well. And then I grab the client width. The web part is actually very well aware of its own width, and trying to get the components inside the web part to be aware of their width doesn't always work so well. But if you let the web part notify its children elements that it's been resized, it's a lot easier to do this. So that's what I do here. And then really, this is probably cheesy code, but I just calculate the aspect ratio based on the selection that's been made. And that allows me to calculate the height of the web part based on the width of the web part. And I pass all this information to the component. And then in the property pane itself, I do use my property pane HTML that allows me to embed HTML. You'll notice, by the way, that I'm using a function that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. It's text.format. It's a great utility that allows you to, if you have localized strings that have placeholders in your localized string, you can actually use text.format to inject content in localized strings before you display it. And that's what I do here. So in the instructions in the property pane, I'm actually able to say, when you get this in Power Apps, you'll have to use, param and then the name of the parameter. I use the property pane toggle here to actually do some interesting stuff. The property pane toggle is the one that allows you to say, yes, it's on, or no, it's off. And that's where I say, do you want dynamic properties? And then what I do here, and again, this is another thing that I don't think a lot of people are aware of, you can actually dynamically display property pane fields in a property pane by just using here in my expression, I'm using if the dynamic property is true, then display this field. And I'm using a dynamic field set, which will allow you to pick the source of the dynamic property and all that stuff. And then this is embarrassingly simple, but on the Power Apps where I render the app, all I do is I grab the semantic colors, I grab the dynamic property value and the name, and then what I do here is I iterate through all the theme values that have been selected by the user, and I pass those values. I just concatenate basically a really ugly URL where I pass in the query string, I pass all the theme values that I want to send to Power Apps. And then I build a really, really ugly frame URL. Again, I say ugly. It's actually not that far off from the original URL if you paid attention earlier, but I do add some extra values here. And then all I do is I import the same iframe or just render the same iframe with the extra width and height preset and a frame border obviously preset. It's really that simple. Now, I would love, and if anybody on the call knows how to do this, I would love to have access to an API that allows me to retrieve the list of Power Apps, because instead of asking users to enter a Power App URL or a Power App ID, I would love to make it a list from a list picker. But I would love, if you have any feedback or any ideas or things that you've been wanting to have in the Power Apps web part that's not available, please don't hesitate to reach out to me or April, and I'll see what I can do about this. Of course, I welcome contributions. It's on the SPFx web parts repo, so you can look at the code, you can submit PRs, but that's it for me, really. Thank you, April, for demoing this. And April, I don't think you mentioned you have an awesome video on YouTube that walks you through in full details how to create a Power App that uses this web part. So we should probably put the link in the chat window. Thank you, everyone.
Fantastic demo. Really appreciate that. Going back to the slides, thank you, Erik, Dipen, and April, and Hugo for some fantastic demos. 3 great demos. Again, would encourage, of course, if anybody out there is interested in doing a demo, anybody at all, please reach out to myself or Vesa, and we will work on getting you scheduled. It might not be the next, immediately next call, because sometimes we're scheduled out a couple weeks, but we'll absolutely get you demoed, get you scheduled to demo, and encourage you to please reach out to us if you are interested. We have a couple minutes for Q&A, so if you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat, but I'm going to work through closing out the rest of the call. So thank you, everybody, for the demos. Thank you, everybody, for attending. The recording will be available in around 24 hours on our YouTube channel. You can always subscribe to our channel today. Follow us on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev or M365 PnP. Our next SPFx call is in 2 weeks, September 10th at 7 a.m. Pacific time. That's just the same time as this call started today. And our next general dev special interest group call is next Thursday in 1 week on September 3rd, again, same time as this call started today. Our September monthly community call for SharePoint will be September 8th, and great agenda coming up for that. We'll be announcing that a little bit before the call. So developer community calls, great set of calls. I encourage you to check these out. I'm not going to read all of these, but I know, like, for example, the Microsoft Graph group, the Microsoft Teams team, I struggle with what to say there, are both doing some fantastic community calls. I encourage you to check out both of those and all of these, in fact. Encourage you to check those out. Lots of great calls going out in the community, lots of great community events. So I encourage you to take advantage of those things, especially while everything is virtual. It's easy for really everybody to get to participate in all these great events, which I think is fantastic. So with that, it doesn't look like there's any last minute questions. So I'll just say again, thank you to Erik, thank you to Dipen, thank you to April, thank you to Hugo, thank you to all of you for attending the call today, and look forward to talking to everybody again soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.